4:33 a.m. The Arabian Sea, 211 miles southeast of Muscat, Oman. The pre-dawn darkness absolute, the sea running a moderate swell from the southwest. Visibility unlimited under a sky full of stars with no moon. The water temperature at 81 degrees Fahrenheit. The air warm and humid and carrying the faint petrochemical smell that the Arabian Sea always carried this far north of the shipping lanes. The horizon was flat and featureless in every direction. MV Hormuz Trader, a Panamanian-flagged general cargo vessel, 11,000 deadweight tons, registered to a shell company incorporated in Ras Al Khaimah 3 months earlier, sailing under a captain and crew of 22 Pakistani and Filipino nationals who had been hired through a Muscat crewing agency 6 weeks before, and who knew only that their cargo was sealed industrial equipment consigned to a logistics company in Hudaydah port on the Yemeni Red Sea coast. The vessel had loaded at Bandar Abbas 11 days earlier. She had transited the Strait of Hormuz in the commercial traffic lane, complied with all maritime reporting requirements, and presented a complete and internally consistent manifest showing industrial machinery components, hydraulic pumps, electrical switchgear, and structural steel assemblies. Her AIS was transmitting normally. Her documentation was impeccable. She was in every verifiable external dimension, an ordinary merchant vessel on an ordinary commercial voyage. In her forward cargo hold, beneath 4 layers of legitimate industrial equipment that would read correctly on any standard X-ray manifest scanner, were 3 sealed titanium containers. Each container was 40 centimeters in diameter, 60 centimeters long, and weighed 112 kilograms. Each was packed in neutron-absorbing polyethylene foam and housed inside a lead-lined outer casing that reduced the external radiation signature to levels indistinguishable from the background radiation of the steel structural components surrounding them. The 3 containers held a combined 22 kilograms of weapons-grade highly enriched uranium, material that had been produced at the Fordow fuel enrichment plant over the preceding 14 months, removed from the facility in a compartmented operation approved at the level of the Supreme Leader himself, and staged at Bandar Abbas for 41 days while the vessel was prepared, crewed, and loaded. The destination was not Hudaydah. It was the Houthi movement's advanced weapons engineering facility in the Saada Governorate of northwestern Yemen, a facility that had been constructing cruise missile and ballistic missile airframes for 3 years with technical assistance from the IRGC Aerospace Force. The 22 kilograms of weapons-grade HEU was not intended to be immediately weaponized. It was intended to be the beginning, the first material transfer in a program that the Quds Force had been designing for 27 months, to give Iran's most capable non-state partner a pathway toward a crude radiological weapon that could be deployed against Saudi Arabian oil infrastructure, Israeli population centers, or American naval assets in the Red Sea. In Tehran, the Supreme National Security Council had approved the transfer 60 days earlier. The strategic logic was multi-layered. A Houthi radiological capability, even a crude, improvised device rather than a true nuclear weapon, would transform the conflict dynamics in the Arabian Peninsula in ways that no conventional weapons transfer had ever achieved. It would deter Saudi Arabian military operations in Yemen. It would deter American naval interdiction in the Red Sea. It would give Iran a nuclear shadow without the legal and strategic consequences of Iran itself, possessing or deploying nuclear weapons. And the transfer mechanism, a commercial vessel with impeccable documentation, neutral crew, and a cargo concealment methodology that had been specifically engineered to defeat standard interdiction procedures, had been assessed by the Quds Force's logistics specialists as undetectable. They had made 5 catastrophic mistakes. The first mistake: the Fordow fuel enrichment plant was not the only facility in Iran that could be used to produce weapons-grade HEU, but it was the facility where the specific production run for this material had taken place. The facility's centrifuge operation produced characteristic electromagnetic signatures, vibration frequencies, power consumption patterns, and ventilation exhaust signatures that the NRO's Signals and Technical Intelligence Collection had been tracking for 8 years. The specific 14-month enrichment campaign that had produced the 22 kilograms of weapons-grade material had been detected by technical collection assets at its commencement, monitored through its duration, and flagged by the Defense Intelligence Agency at high confidence as potentially intended for transfer rather than storage at the 11-month mark. The DIA's alert, issued 49 days before the MV Hormuz trader, loaded at Bandar Abbas, had elevated CENTCOM's maritime interdiction watch posture for all vessels originating from Iranian ports to enhanced, triggering a secondary analysis protocol for every vessel filing a manifest from Bandar Abbas. The second mistake. The shell company in Ras Al Khaimah that owned the MV Hormuz trader had been incorporated 3 months before the loading date. The crewing agency in Muscat had been engaged 2 months before. The vessel itself had been purchased through a broker chain that used 4 intermediary entities across 3 jurisdictions. Each of these steps had left a financial and corporate registry trail. The Treasury Department's Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence had been running a specialized analytical program for 21 months, codenamed Spectrum, specifically designed to identify the financial patterns associated with IRGC maritime proliferation logistics. The Spectrum algorithm had flagged the Ras Al Khaimah shell company at incorporation, not because it was on any sanctions list, but because its corporate structure, capitalization, and activity pattern matched 17 of the 19 indicator criteria associated with IRGC maritime front company activity. The flag had reached CENTCOM Maritime Intelligence at 32 days before the loading date. The MV Hormuz trader had been identified as a vessel of interest before she had loaded a single kilogram of cargo. The third mistake. The lead-lined containers had been engineered to defeat standard X-ray manifest scanning and to reduce the external gamma radiation signature to background levels. They had been engineered against the detection standards of the early 2020s. They had not been engineered against the next-generation radiation detection and nuclear sciences capabilities deployed on the USS Bataan Amphibious Ready Group's MH-60S Seahawk helicopters, specifically the Halo-R standoff radiation anomaly detection system that had been fitted to 2 of the Bataan's MH-60S airframes in a classified installation 12 months earlier. The Halo-R system detected directional gamma and neutron signatures at ranges of up to 800 meters from a passing vessel, using a cryogenically cooled germanium detector array, processed against a spectral database that could distinguish between natural background radiation, legitimate industrial isotopes, and enriched uranium signatures. Its sensitivity at 800 meters was 17 times greater than any system that had been publicly described in open-source literature on maritime nuclear detection. When a Halo-R-equipped MH-60S conducted a routine maritime patrol pass over the MV Hormuz trader at 3:19 a.m., as part of the enhanced surveillance protocol triggered by the Spectrum flag 49 days earlier, the system detected a directional neutron signature consistent with weapons-grade HEU at a confidence level of 91% on the first pass and 96% on the second pass 4 minutes later. The MV Hormuz trader's cargo hold contained enriched uranium. The Halo-R had confirmed it from 800 meters in the dark. The fourth mistake. The 22 crew members aboard the MV Hormuz trader were genuinely unaware of what they were carrying. The captain's crew manifest, employment contracts, and personal communications were all consistent with commercial mariners on a normal voyage who had no knowledge of their cargo's actual content. This was, from the Quds Force's perspective, an operational security advantage. Crew members who did not know could not inadvertently reveal. From the boarding team's perspective, it meant that the crew would not resist, would cooperate, and would be able to provide complete information about the cargo loading procedures they had observed at Bandar Abbas. The unknowing crew was not a protection for the cargo. It was a source of forensic information that would corroborate the physical evidence. The fifth mistake, the one that transformed a maritime interdiction into a comprehensive dismantling of the IRGC's nuclear transfer infrastructure, was the Quds Force's assumption that the discovery of the transfer, if it occurred, would be managed as a diplomatic incident requiring negotiation before any direct military response was authorized. The cargo was on a commercial vessel in international waters. The response to a cargo seizure was a legal and diplomatic process: protests, counter-protests, international tribunal filings, not a military strike on Iranian nuclear infrastructure. The SNSC had assessed that even if the MV Hormuz trader were intercepted, the HEU recovered, and the transfer exposed, Iran's position would be defensible. The material would be described as a misrouted industrial shipment, the documentation would be contested, and the international community's response would be confined to the diplomatic channel for months. What the SNSC had not assessed was the existence of a pre-authorized response package, signed by the President of the United States and stored at CENTCOM with a standing execute authority, that treated the confirmed interdiction of weapons-grade nuclear material being transferred to a non-state armed group in an active conflict zone as an imminent threat to regional security, requiring immediate action against the originating facility, the Fordow fuel enrichment plant, from which the material had been produced, and the IRGC Aerospace Forces Parchin Weapons Engineering Complex, which had assessed and certified the container's shielding design were both on the target list. The pre-authorization had been drafted against exactly this scenario. It required only the Halo R confirmation, at 91% or greater, to execute. What happened in the next 107 minutes simultaneously secured the vessel, recovered the material, and eliminated the production and engineering infrastructure that had made the transfer possible. At 4:33 a.m., 74 minutes after the first Halo R detection, the execute order reached USS Bataan, and the SEAL Team 2 task unit that had been aboard the ship, at enhanced readiness since the Spectrum flag, had elevated the MV Hormuz trader to primary surveillance target 19 days earlier. The SEAL team had rehearsed the Hormuz trader boarding 4 times, using vessel geometry mock-ups on the Bataan's well deck. They knew the ship's layout, her crew accommodation plan, and the location of her forward cargo hold. 2 MH-60S helicopters lifted from the Bataan's flight deck at 4:37 a.m. carrying the 16-operator SEAL element and 2 explosive ordnance disposal technicians. A third MH-60S carried a 4-person HEU handling and packaging team from the Department of Energy's Emergency Response Team, 2 nuclear material specialists, and 2 radiation safety technicians who had been embarked on the Bataan for exactly this eventuality since the ship's departure from Bahrain 8 days earlier. Their equipment included Type B certified transport containers and the full personal protective equipment required for handling weapons-grade material at sea. The 2 SEAL insertion helicopters reached the MV Hormuz trader at 4:51 a.m. The lead helicopter's door gunner illuminated the bridge with a spotlight, while the SEAL element fast-roped to the vessel's main deck from both helicopters simultaneously. The bridge and engine room were secured in 41 seconds. The captain, a 53-year-old Pakistani national from Karachi named Mohammed Aslam Bahati, was brought to the bridge wing and informed in Urdu by the team's interpreter that the vessel was being boarded under United Nations Security Council Resolution 1540 authority for a maritime security inspection. Captain Patti cooperated fully and immediately. He had no knowledge of what his cargo hold contained. The forward cargo hold was accessed at 5:04 a.m. The SEAL element and the EOD technicians penetrated the layers of legitimate industrial equipment and located the 3 titanium containers at 5:19 a.m. The Halo R operator aboard the second MH-60S conducted a close-range confirmation scan at 5:21 a.m. Confidence level, Athiawa 99.3%. Weapons-grade HEU. 3 containers. 22 kilograms assessed. The DOE handling team boarded from the 3rd MH-60S at 5:24 t.m. They began the transfer protocol, removing each container from its lead-lined outer casing, placing it in a Type B certified transport container, and preparing it for helicopter transfer to the Bataan. At 5:29 a.m. The transfer of all 3 containers to the Bataan was completed at 6:14 a.m. 22 kilograms of weapons-grade HEU removed from the MV Hormuz trader and secured in the Bataan's classified cargo lock 43 minutes after the first container was located. The 22 crew members were assembled on the main deck, photographed, documented, and interviewed through interpreters. All 22 provided voluntary cooperation. Their testimony, consistent across all 22 individuals, confirmed the loading at Bandar Abbas, the sealed nature of the forward cargo, and the instructions they had received to deliver the vessel to Hodeidah without opening the forward hold under any circumstances. All 22 were determined to have no knowledge of the cargo's actual content. All 22 were transferred to a Philippine Navy vessel that had been positioned to receive them and were transported to Muscat, where they were released to Omani maritime authorities. The MV Hormuz trader was taken under tow by USS Baton's towing element and directed toward a designated holding position south of the traffic separation scheme, where she would await formal disposition proceedings under UNSCR 1540. The pre-authorized strike package executed at 5:47 a.m., 26 minutes after the HEU containers were confirmed, and while the DOE handling team was still completing the material transfer. From Al Dhafra, airbase in the United Arab Emirates, 8 F-35. As of the 388th Fighter Wing launched at 5:49 a.m. carrying JASSM cruise missiles on strike profiles against the Fordow fuel enrichment plant. The facility embedded in the granite bedrock beneath Qom at a depth of 80 meters, hardened against conventional penetrating weapons, but whose above-ground infrastructure, the electrical substations providing the enormous power load required for centrifuge operation, the cooling water infrastructure, the administrative and security compounds, and the ventilation and exhaust systems that the centrifuge halls required for continuous operation, was accessible to precision weapons from above. The JASSM salvo of 24 missiles reached Fordow at 6:44 a.m. The primary electrical substation received 4 direct impacts, structural collapse, all power feeds severed. The secondary substation received 3 impacts. The cooling water pumping station received 4 impacts. The ventilation control building received 3 impacts. The centrifuge halls themselves, too deep for the JASSM's penetrating warhead, were intact below the surface. But without electrical power, cooling water, or ventilation, the centrifuge cascade that had produced the 22 kilograms could not operate. The facility's assessed recovery timeline for restored centrifuge operation, not less than 18 to 24 months. From RAF Fairford in the United Kingdom, 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers that had been airborne since 3 a.m., pre-positioned in anticipation of the Halo R confirmation, were inbound to their primary targets. The first B-2 carried GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator bombs assigned to the IRGC Aerospace Forces Parchin Weapons Engineering Complex southeast of Tehran, specifically the hardened underground laboratory at Site 80 within the Parchin complex, where the lead-lined container shielding design had been engineered and where the material certification testing had been conducted. Site 80 was assessed at hardened depth of 32 meters. The GBU-57's 60-meter penetration capability against reinforced concrete was sufficient. 2 GBU-57s were released against Site 80 at 6:51 a.m. Both penetrated to assess depth before detonation. The underground laboratory was assessed as comprehensively rendered inoperable. The second B-2 carried GBU-57s, assigned to the Quds Forces Maritime Logistics Facility at Bandar Abbas, specifically the secure warehouse complex at the naval base's restricted pier, where the 3 containers had been prepared, sealed, and loaded onto the MV Hormuz trader. The facility had been under NRO surveillance since the loading operation 41 days earlier, and its layout was fully mapped. 3 GBU-57s struck the warehouse complex at 6:58 a.m. All 3 of the facility's main structures collapsed. The loading equipment, the secondary shielding materials, and the documentation associated with the transfer program were assessed as destroyed. By 7 a.m., 2 hours and 27 minutes after the execute order, the complete response package was executed. The final accounting was documented by CENTCOM, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the Department of Energy over the subsequent 72 hours. Weapons-grade HEU transferred from Iranian state custody to a Houthi-linked vessel for delivery to an active conflict zone. Attempted. Weapons-grade HEU recovered by U.S. maritime interdiction teams, 22 kilograms, 100% of the assessed transfer quantity. HEU delivered to Yemen, 0 kilograms. 0. Fordow fuel enrichment plant centrifuge operation. Suspended pending infrastructure restoration, minimum 18 to 24 months. Parchin Site 80 Weapons Engineering Laboratory, permanently inoperable. Bandar Abbas Maritime Logistics Facility, permanently inoperable. Total IRGC nuclear transfer infrastructure rendered inoperable, 3 facilities. Crew members of MV Hormuz Trader, 22, all released to Omani maritime custody, all unharmed. American service members having sustained any injury in the entire operation, 0. American aircraft lost, 0. All F-35As returned to Al Dhafra. Both B-2s recovered at Diego Garcia. In Tehran, the Supreme National Security Council received its damage assessment at 9 a.m. The 22 kilograms of weapons-grade HEU, produced over 14 months at Fordow, staged for 41 days at Bandar Abbas, loaded with meticulous operational security onto a vessel with impeccable documentation and an unknowing crew, concealed inside a shielding configuration specifically designed to defeat known detection systems, was now in a Type B certified transport container in the cargo lock of an American warship in the Arabian Sea. The Fordow facility that had produced it was without power or cooling. The laboratory that had designed the shielding was rubble. The loading facility that had prepared it was rubble. The 22 kilograms would never reach Yemen. The program that had designed the transfer would require years to reconstruct. And the detection capability that had found the containers at 800 meters in the dark from a helicopter, without the vessel ever knowing it was being scanned, was something the Quds Force had never assessed existed. This is what happens when you engineer a maritime nuclear transfer operation to defeat detection systems whose published specifications you have studied and whose classified successors you have not accounted for. And when the vessel you select is flagged by a financial intelligence algorithm 19 days before it sails. This is what happens when the pre-authorized response to the confirmed interdiction of weapons-grade nuclear material reaches the Fordow centrifuge halls, the Parchin Engineering Laboratory, and the Bandar Abbas loading facility in the same morning that your containers are removed from the cargo hold. The material is secure. The program is dismantled. It is not going to Yemen.